guys, welcome back to the Trainer Feed. We have a great episode today with a good friend of ours called Andrew Schaeffer. How are you guys doing? Angel, Jacques?
We're good.
Chilling?
Yeah, buzzing for this episode.
What?
Buzzing. I'm like buzzing. I'm like ready to go.
How about you, David? How are you? Are you buzzing?
I'm good. I'm chilling. I'm not buzzing. What says buzzing, bro? Like, anyway, all right, let's get Andrew in. Hey, Andrew, what's up?
Hey, Andrew.
What's up, man?
What's going on,
Angel,
man?
what's going on?
How's it going?
Pretty good. How are you guys doing?
Where have you been?
Well,
I haven't seen Andrew. I saw Andrew months ago, I think. I haven't seen him since.
Where have you been?
Dave, it's been like a year since
you.
I've seen you because I haven't been back in the club since they closed down.
Wow.
You Zoom and shit, right?
Yeah, just been doing Zoom the whole time.
Nice.
Well, congratulations, because you're a dad now, right? I think the
Yeah,
last time
see,
Jacques
it's been
and I
that
saw
long.
you, your wife was pregnant and due in May, I believe, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yep. Got a almost 10-month-old now.
Wow.
Yeah, she was born May 24th. So yeah, it's been exciting.
That's
It's been
awesome.
fun though.
How's she doing? How's Marissa doing?
She's good. She's working a lot. She's still doing a lot of work virtually and starting to do a little bit of stuff in person again. So,
Did you guys get vaccinated and stuff?
keeping busy. She got vaccinated because she's a healthcare worker.
Oh, okay.
I have not been vaccinated. So I'm hoping that, come May or
Just
so.
shy of the 60-year-old eligibility mark.
Just barely.
Just,
Damn. I hope you're not gonna grill him all hour long, David.
I know, David.
I
He's
haven't
our
done
guest.
it since I haven't seen him. I have to catch up. Been giving it enough to Keith. I gotta give it to Andrew now.
You need to heckle me is what you need to do.
There you go. All right. Well, thanks for joining us on our show here.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask about your sort of transition or your journey into personal training, because I know you have a music background too, and I want to know what's was it music and then training, or was it the other way around, or was it kind of like all just together at the same time?
Well, so what happened was I was living abroad after college. I went to Germany and I was teaching English over there. I did that in a high school for a couple of years. And then after that, I was teaching for Berlitz Language Institute, which is an American company, and they do English language lessons all over the world mostly for business people, but it can be for anyone. Mm-hmm. So I was doing that. That was my primary work. But while I was living in Hamburg in Germany, I was playing a lot of music in a couple bands and, trying to make as much music as possible. So yeah. And then when I finished in Germany and knew I wanted to come back to the States, I pretty much had a blank slate. I could go anywhere and do anything. I mean, in terms of, I didn't have like a career path I was following or anything like that. It was kind of open.
Why didn't you stick with music?
What's that?
Why didn't you stick with music?
I never really saw myself doing music as a professional, like, teaching lessons or being like a working musician. I was interested in playing in bands, when I was in Hamburg, and, you always hope a band will be successful.
You're a rock star in Germany.
Exactly. Yeah. But, besides playing in bands, I never had a desire to pursue music in another professional capacity. So yeah, when I came back, I just didn't really think about that. And then somewhere I got the idea to try out personal training. I think I was attracted to the kind of entrepreneurial aspect of it, doing your own thing, the potential to build your own build your own business basically. So yeah, I just sort of got the idea, and then I went to New York. I'd always wanted to live in New York. So when I was coming back, I have relatives who live on the Upper West Side. So I was staying with them for a few days, and I just happened to walk into Equinox around the corner. And before I knew it, I'd been hired. So.
What was your background in athletics, or, in terms of were you a lifter? Did you play sports? What sort of, shoved you into that direction?
Yeah, I was a runner. I did track and field and cross country
through shot put.
So when I started track and field in junior high, like 7th grade, I didn't know anything about it. I just kind of joined it because I wanted some kind of a social thing to do. So, and actually, that's not the only reason. I also sort of knew amazingly that I was not in very good shape. I had like enough presence of mind at that time to be like, boy, I'm really not in great shape. I ought to do something physical. But I'm terrible at sports. I'm no good at like anything with a ball. Basically, I'm horrible at. God. So I decided to do track and field in 7th grade. And I didn't know anything about it. So like the first day I ended up with the shot putters. And I didn't even really know that I was doing that because on the first day they weren't doing any throwing or anything. They were basically doing like general conditioning. So I was over with these throwers like totally unawares. So it's funny you say that. But yeah, I got into running from there, and I did track and field and cross country basically from junior high until the end of college. Wow. But I pursued it. I pursued it almost more like a fitness regimen than an athletic endeavor, because I'm not really very athletic. I always tell my clients, like, I'm really not athletic. I'm good at working out, but I'm not talented at all.
Exercising.
Exactly. I'm good at exercising. I'm not good at sports per se.
How was the conditioning? Like in terms of what you do now, and maybe some of the things you now, knowing what you know, maybe wasn't the best thing to have a 7th, 8th grader do for conditioning
oh God, there's so much. We used to do all kinds of like sit-ups and crunches and lots of push-ups and just all these sort of like, front of your body muscular
jailhouse exercises.
Yeah, totally. You're young enough, you can kind of take a pounding, but I don't think it helped anything. It was kind of a waste of time. I wish that I had known more about training progressively. I feel like those early years, I just kind of got thrown in, and a lot of times I was asked to do way too much, run too far, do too many laps. Just all kinds of stuff. And if I knew then what I know now, I think I could have been a lot more efficient at getting better. Of course, I still would have had to do what the coaches asked me to do, so it probably wouldn't have mattered. But yeah, it was pretty. It definitely felt like it was pretty haphazard. They pretty much threw everything at the wall, and made you go through it.
Well, that's great. Especially watching you train people at Equinox, it's very. I've learned a lot. And one thing that I remember talking to you about, I think. And this is I always wanted to ask you about the whole Turkish Get Up thing, because I know you love to do them, and you think doing a full Turkish Get Up is great. No, but in all seriousness, I don't think you like the full Turkish Get Up, right? Or what is it? What's going on with it? Because I remember you and I had a conversation about it, and I said, well, I like doing it, but you had other opinions about it.
That's funny you bring that up. Yeah, I have clients who give me a hard time about this too. Okay, so let me start off by saying, first of all, that I don't think that the Turkish Get Up is actually like a bad exercise, right? Okay, I think it's fine. But what I've noticed about the Turkish Get Up is that I always hear people say like, oh, well, it's getting up off the ground, like everybody needs to learn how to get up and get down off the ground. And I'm like, nobody gets up off the ground like a Turkish Get Up. It's the most awkward,
right,
strange way to get up and down on the floor. Like, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
You got a baby now. You can do it with your baby.
Yeah, I can tell you, Beverly does not get off the floor like a and so to me, I don't know. I think part of it is I just got to be contrarian about the Turkish Get Up. I find, and it's fairly complicated. That's the other thing too. Like when I tried using it with clients, you know, you got to break it down into all these steps, and it sort of takes a long time to get people to do it well. And I was just like, this is not worth the effort.
Yeah.
At least for me, I felt like, you know, look, if you want to get off the floor, you got to have decent leg strength. Well, we can squat, or we can deadlift, or we can do bridges, or we can do any number of things to make your leg strength better. You know, shoulder stability. I mean, hey, you know, you can do an arm bar, or, you know, work on overhead press. I mean, there's a million other things you can do. I just never saw why Turkish Get Up was worth the effort. But anyways,
no, you're right. You're right. I mean, with my client, I think I've shown it to, other than the newer trainers coming into the club, and if I'm asked to teach them how to do it or something, but I've probably taught maybe 3 of my clients since I've been a trainer how to do a full get up. And that's, I think, because they've asked.
And then how well do they remember as well?
I'm not very well.
It's hard for them to, once you taught it, for them to, all right, let me show you step by step by step. There's always, right, the opportunity where you think, oh, that was good, but for completion, just pivot your hand here or whatever it is. I find that's always been kind of the case.
I mean, I've taught the get up from a shin box position or something with weights, but nothing with like an overhead, you know, with a kettlebell overhead or anything like that. But hey, I don't know. I think, at least for me, I think we're trainers, right? And we tend to do stuff that I think a lot of our clients don't need to do, right? Like, I don't think my clients need to do a clean and jerk or a snatch crazy heavy unless they ask, right? What are your plans in terms of because you were talking about you wanting to build your own, or you were interested in building your own business when you came back to the States. What's going on after this? I mean, COVID really took a big hit, I think, on everyone. And do you have any plans in terms of what your business and what your brand is going to be for the future?
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, I have sort of pivoted a little bit. I am now in a master's program for mental health counseling.
Nice.
Which is something I started, it may be almost a year now. So
you're going to be someone's counselor?
Yeah.
Shit, man.
Can you imagine?
Fuck.
So yeah, that's been the biggest change in my career path so far, is just getting into that. I think so much about health and fitness is really mental health related. So yeah, that's why I sort of got interested in it. And I don't know exactly how I'm going to merge the two things, or if I'll merge the two things at all. I don't know if I may just transition completely to being a counselor, or if I might try to do both jobs, kind of parallel, or if maybe I'll try to merge them in some way. I can't yet say for certain. I sort of just entered it with an idea of like, I'll cross that bridge when I come to it, see what the course brings me to. I did find, there's a place I'm looking at that I'd be interested in doing some internship work with, or something that specializes in sort of health and wellness and their mental health treatments. And I think, there's some angles of like, eating disorders and things like that. I mean, I think there's a lot of, or as we know, there's a lot of crossover. So hopefully it will be a continuation of the same road.
You're going to have your session room and then a weight room right next to it in a warehouse.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you guys had Diana on this show, right?
Yeah.
You guys talked about Women of Iron, right?
Mm-hmm.
So obviously she did that whole program where they got women from that, what's the name of the organization? Do you guys remember?
Sanctuary for Families, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Where they had participants come from Sanctuary for Families. So women who've had, domestic violence situations, and using the weight training as a way to help them, through this situation. It was a really cool idea, a really cool program. I think she wants to do some more of it. And there was some talk of maybe, trying to see what kind of outcome measures they can do in terms of mental health and stuff. So like the idea, that is all to say, the idea that you just mentioned is not very far-fetched, right? the idea that you can use exercise. And exercise is a well-recognized way to help regulate mental health. Even in the mental health field, we talk about that all the time. Mindfulness and exercise and a lot of the things that we use are mental health tools. So there's a lot of crossover, and I'm looking forward to doing more with it.
Cool.
That's awesome. I wanted to kind of pivot towards some of the training stuff that like I've seen from you. Like I know that you have clientele that has been retained for a while in terms of like you training them for a long time. I remember when I got on and I saw, I think it was like one of the first forums, they were like, all right, everybody give a round of applause for Andrew Schaeffer, who's the retention trainer of the month or something like that. And you had your clients for like 5 years or something like that. I was like,
retention champ.
And I was like, how the hell do you do that? And I asked a similar question to Mel, because Mel also had like some clients that traveled with her or like did some training with her. So in terms of client retention, do you have a secret or any advice to keeping and maintaining those clients?
Yeah. Well, I mean, one thing that I think everybody has to realize, really in any field where you're working with people, to a certain degree, it's just finding your people, right? And it takes a while, especially like new trainers when they start. It takes a long time to sort of work with different kinds of people and filter out who is going to connect well with you. As a new trainer, I think something that helped me sort of find my clients quicker is that I looked, I put in a lot of effort trying to sort of learn and find out what is the training philosophy that I think makes the most sense to me, and tried to always hone in on that more and more and more and more. And again, what that does is it kind of filters out people, right? So like I don't do like bodybuilding really, or like, you know, any of those kinds of things. So there's a whole bunch of people out there who maybe are interested in that, who just aren't going to end up being clients of mine. I got much more into, you know, strength training, and really for the purpose of helping people feel better and move better, have fewer aches and pains, and, you know, just be able to go through life a little less banged up. And so once I started getting into that, you know, I started basically getting people who were either maybe 40s or 50s or higher, or people who had injuries, like sort of long-term injuries, stuff that they just were having trouble getting over. And then once that happens, you know, then you're much better set up to find clients who are going to stick around. So I think, does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it seems like you find what you're driven towards. And if it makes sense to you, you know that you're going to do it and you're going to be passionate with it. Right. But if it's something that doesn't make sense to you, it's kind of like you're not interested in it. Your clients are probably not interested in it because you're not giving off that energy or that vibe. So for some people, it might be bodybuilding and that might be their passion. And then you get a trainer or a coach who loves bodybuilding and you'll work together very well. But conversely, like if you're trying to sell bodybuilding and you're more into functional training or, you know, joint health or longevity of whatever, then it's not going to pair well. It's not going to marry well.
Right. The other thing I'd say too, for me, that's been really important is like, so I do basically strength training, and I kind of, I revolve everything around the squat and the deadlift. In my mind, what I'm always trying to do is get everybody to be able to do a good squat and a good deadlift. And not everyone's going to be able to achieve that, of course, but to me, that's what I'm always trying to do. So I structure workouts around, well, you know, what are they struggling with in their squat or their deadlift? Is it shoulder mobility or T-spine mobility or whatever, strength, you know, core stability. And I just use that as my anchor, and then I work around that. And for me, I know that if I do that, I can show people progress, because I can show people, like, you know, like you can't lift, you know, you can't get your arms over your head, you know, 180 degrees. You don't have 180 degrees of shoulder flexion, right? But we can work on that and we can make that better. And I can do that, and I know that I can do that. And when I work with people, I'm always sort of going that direction. There's always something that can be improved, and then I work on it. As opposed to, say, like, if somebody wants to come in and lose 25 pounds, like, to me, like, I have no control over that, right? Like, I'm going to try my best to coach them through this, but at the end of the day, I have much less control over whether or not I can get them to do what's necessary to reach that kind of a goal. Same thing with like bodybuilding. If people want to be really muscular, to me, there's so much genetics that comes into play there. Like, because me, I tried to do bodybuilding, like, not competitively, but my entry into weight training was all about
#bulking every day. I remember that.
Yeah, exactly. It was all
Andrew's trying to feed himself. He's like sweating, trying to eat all that food.
Exactly. I wanted to look like Wolverine, And it took me a number of years to finally realize, like, I am just not genetically built like that. My body just has no interest in putting on that kind of muscle. So, like, and usually I would just get hurt. Like, the harder I would try to train in order to achieve that, I would just get hurt. So, yeah, basically goals like that are very much not in my control. Goals like strength, I can make a person stronger. I can make a person more mobile. I can deliver that, and I can deliver it for a very long time. I can always get people better and better and better. And that's another reason that I think I retain people, because it never loses its appeal. No matter how strong a client is today, I can make them a little bit better, and they come back for that.
That's awesome. I have so many side questions that I'll try to just go in the direction that you had. Like, one side question was like, and maybe this could be food for thought for later, or like while you're, the next meal that you have. So like, why, or has your wife being a physical therapist, has that impacted what you think of training, or how has that had an impact in your choice of training? And then also, like, why the squat and the deadlift pattern, and then also why Wolverine? Like, there are just so many questions, but I'm going to go with one thing because it leads into another question that I already had been thinking about is, how do you implement mobility training into a program? A lot of my clients who are trying to become more mobile or have greater flexibility, it sometimes is challenging because they'll hold a pose or a stretch for like, 20, 30 seconds and then just move on. And as we know, it takes a lot longer than that to do almost anything in the body from a physiological standpoint. So how have you worked to implement mobility training into your clients' programs?
Yeah, well, that's a good question, because it actually has evolved a lot for me. When I first started, I got really interested in sort of direct mobility training, doing things with bands, whatever. I never used yoga, but, yoga style, mobility drills and things like that, corrective exercises. I was big into that at first. But over time, I started to realize that I can really get a person working on their mobility, even just with the basic movements themselves, like a squat. So for me now, when I have a client and I want to teach them a squat, okay, and they can't do a squat, right? Just stand there, body weight and do it. So my next thought is, okay, I need them to do a squat pattern somehow. How can I make that happen? So for me, the go-to is to give somebody a counterweight like the Viper, or it can be a barbell if you don't have Vipers. Stand a barbell on end, have them hold on to it and tilt it away from themselves while they squat down. So it gives them a counterweight so they can then do their squat. They're hanging on to the weight, and that's helping them squat down. And then the key is you've got to coach them into being right on the edge, like squatting, using the weight only enough to get into the good position. And it's usually, it's hard for them, right? It'll feel like a stretch. So like, to clarify, like if you just give somebody a counterweight and they just, or like you'll often see people do squats with the TRX. They hold on to the TRX and then they squat down, right? But that's not a squat, right? They're leaning back. If the TRX wasn't there, they'd just fall over. So it's not actually a squat. And what you need them to do is to do a real squat. So what you have to do is you have to be really focused on, okay, you're down in this position, but notice that like if you let go of that barbell, you'd fall over, right? So we need to fix that. We need to get you to pull yourself a little more into position, a little more forward, get your center of gravity where it needs to be. Oftentimes they're going to feel like a big stretch as they try to do that in, say, their ankles, right? Because often it's their ankles that are giving them problems. They're having a hard time making the angle that they need in that bottom position with their ankle. So they've leaned back so that their ankle can be at like 90 degrees instead of, you know, the whatever it needs to be. And so you have to get them to lean into it a little bit. And it's very interactive. Those early moments, you really have to show them and help them. But at this point, I almost use no corrective exercises. I pretty much just do, okay, how do we make you able to get into the squat position? Hip hinge is the same thing, right? Like, how am I going to make this happen? A lot of times you start with bridges, you know, and then I like to move to the hip thruster off of the bench. And the reason that's a good example, the reason I like to do that, where they're basically bridging off the bench, is if they don't hinge, then they slide off the bench, right? Because their hips go straight down, and then it pulls them off the bench. And then you have to be on them as the coach. You have to be like, look, when you do this, I don't want you to slide off the bench. You have to pull your hips under you in order to keep that bench in the same spot on your back, right? So again, like you have to find a way where they're going to be able to be successful in what you're trying to get them to do. So in this case, a hip hinge, you know, and then beyond all over them. But again, I mean, I almost use no correctives. I don't do like band around the hips anymore. You know, I used to use that just fine. Like I don't need it.
Would you maybe recommend it as homework for your clients?
What, like
the correctives that you don't do anymore?
No, I don't. You know, and the other reason is because oftentimes, again, like I feel like when you're trying to get them to do a better quality movement, you really have to be helping them. You really have to be telling them where it's going wrong and finding ways to help them be successful with it. Because otherwise, they'll just do 10 reps that aren't any good, right? Yeah. So, anyways, that's my philosophy. I mean, I would put the caveat out there that sure, sometimes if you give somebody homework, even if they're not doing it great, there's a lot their body will kind of figure out on its own. So I don't think it's bad, but I don't typically do it. I just find it's unnecessary. I can get people in a few sessions through these methods that I'm talking about to sort of understand what we're after. And then it's just, and then that's the training program. And again, like I said, you know, when it comes back to retention, right? Like you build from there. You start with, you know, they're doing bridges off the bench. They sort of figure out where the hip hinge is from there. And then you're ready. Okay, then you get them on their feet and then you start doing some hip hinge stuff on their feet. It's a whole new exercise. You can say, remember this, do it here. They feel what's going on, and you know you're building from there, and that keeps people coming back.
That's interesting because it's kind of like the client doesn't necessarily move away from that movement pattern, so it's already innate that the focus is there, and they don't have to think about how do the, you know, three sets of 15 dead bugs correlate to me being able to squat, right? Because you're sticking with that movement pattern, even if it's, you know, you're using a bench or even if you're using a bar as a counterweight, but you're still moving the same pieces in the way that you would use them for the other movements as well. So that is interesting. It does really all tie in.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Like I when I'm trying to teach them something, especially beginners, I then also try to find a lot of repeating ways to get them to do something. So yeah, if we're working on squat, we'll start doing squat drills, et cetera. And then later in the workout, if we're going to do rows, I'll have them do like a squatting cable row, because then it's another opportunity to talk about like, okay, so you're going to squat down and do these rows and pay attention to where your squat is, right? Like you can't be leaning back too much, or else, once you pull the weight towards you, you'll fall over, and you can keep reiterating the same points. And I think that's really important, that repetition, because we all know how long it can take for it to click with someone. And so the more you can repeat an idea, the better.
Yeah, I think for me personally, I've noticed that sometimes I feel like I get bored with the program before my clients get bored with the program. And then I think that I choose to put new exercises in or try different variations or progress too early or regress too soon. And then the client is left like, which version of this are we doing again? And it's been a fault of mine. So I've been trying to correct that, being able to give the repetition so that it familiarizes them with the movement patterns, as well as like they learn it and they own it and they know it, and then they can move on to bigger and better. But the next thing that I did want to ask about kind of ties into this is, how has your training style changed since training virtually? And has it made you a better coach? Because obviously we don't have the physical touch is not there, palpations, all that stuff is not there. So how has that made you a better coach, if it has?
Yeah, I think it has. The biggest improvement, I think, for me has been I've learned to be very clear and very specific. And that's useful because, when you're in person, you can always just, you try to explain something. If it's not going right, you just show them. You just do it for them. You don't have that.
Literally shove them into position.
Yeah.
Like, what? Just here.
Yeah. Sometimes I still wish, there's no replacement for being able to shove someone into position. However,
like, no, this. And then they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. But being clear has been improved since working virtually. What was the other part of that question you wanted to know?
No, has it made you, I just want to know, how has your training style changed since training virtually? Right. And then, obviously it seems like it's made you a better coach. So that's good.
Yeah. Another thing, something that is useful for me, it was already beneficial. Like we were just talking about, you kind of want to think about ways to, always hit the same topic and sort of tie in everything that you're doing, relate it back to maybe a single idea. So like today we're working on squat form. So everything I do is going to tie into that theme. When you set yourself up that way, it makes it a lot easier to coach, right? Because you are, how do I say it? You're like, you're helping yourself out along the way because you've already introduced an idea, right? You've introduced an idea. They kind of have a sense of it. Then when you go on to the next situation, you can refer back to what you already did. And then they can be like, oh yeah, right. Like, remember, remember where I said your shoulder blades need to be in that last, in that exercise. Well, now here, you want to do the same thing. And that's way easier than trying to explain new stuff all the time, the whole way through the whole hour. So yeah, it's been good virtually sort of reinforced that to me, I think, even more, like how useful it is to repeat themes and be able to point back to something you've already done. So it helps organize training a lot.
Definitely. I think about that a lot too. Just the training program, if I'm going to have them standing or seated or, on the floor, I try to figure out a way to get the repetition in. And then I also just focus on the themes a lot more than when I was in person, because sometimes in person, it was about availability of equipment as well. And also with space, right? It's weird because I just went into 76 today and it was like dead. But like compared to what it used to be, right? Like it's definitely bumping up, but there was just so much space. All 3 squat racks were open. And I guess you guys have an additional squat rack too. But it's just like things like
crazy
that.
Tuesday, Thursday nights though. I was there the past couple of nights. Oh my God. It's like, there's no pandemic going on.
But
oh really? Wow.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just they're in a more controlled environment. So then you have more control over the things you can do and structure and et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
Yeah, the tools you can use. And this is, I know you said you haven't been back in the gym since last year, but let's say whether it be virtually or whether it's in person, what are some of the, let's say with a brand new person, what are some of the first areas of opportunity that you work with someone, assuming there's more than one thing going on? I know you spoke about if it's, someone wanting to get stronger, someone want to get more mobile, or what for you, the first thing you look at working on with a new client?
But yeah, it's squat or deadlift, right? I mean, I look at how can they do this movement, right? Most of the people that I see, I would say only 10% of people that I've ever had come in as a potential client could do a decent squat, right? So 90% of people really can't do it very well. So the first thing I do is look at their squat and then go from there. Like what's the problem here? And then I start working off of that. And like I said, I mean, I've had a lot of clients for a long time now, so I don't see a lot of new people.
Right.
When I get a new person, it's usually going to be somebody who either requested me or was referred, or maybe the office figures I would be a good match. So usually they'll come in and they'll have something like an achy back or bad knees or bad shoulders. So I look at the squat and say like, well, these movement patterns are really not ideal. Moving better is going to help your joints feel better because you're not going to be beating up on them all the time. That's a very easy sell basically. And so that's my go-to. And if they have other goals, truth be told, they usually end up just conforming to what I'm doing.
You have goals where these are your goals now.
These are your goals now.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of,
I'm the captain now.
Again, it goes back to that idea of often, sure, everybody wants to lose at least 10 pounds, right? I don't think I've ever seen anybody come into the gym and not say like, I want to lose some weight.
Right.
But again, like I know in the back of my mind, it's not really up to me. So we can talk about it and stuff, but pretty quickly I'm going to be directing them towards things like, hey, that achy shoulder you got, like, well, here's something we can do about that.
And even like you mentioned it, I think it was Angel David's question about when someone does come in to lose weight or gain more muscle mass, and you mentioned genetics. There's so many variables that we can't control. And if the most a client usually sees us is 3 to 4 times a week, right? For the most part, most commonly it's twice. How many of those, if you only see them on 2 hours in that whole week, there's so much going on we don't, like you said, can't have control over. And something I really liked how you touched on with the squat and deadlift, honestly, this can get overlooked with people that may not be too familiar or people that aren't in the industry. But if you want to lose weight and you want to get strong, like squat and deadlift, if you get stronger at those other goals you spoke about are going to come with it, right? Is that fair to say?
Well, yeah, I do think that's fair to say because, and it could be for a variety of reasons. I mean, for some people, getting a little stronger, feeling a little better, then it will lead to changes in other areas of behavior. Right. They'll be more active. And once they're more active, they're more likely to kind of want to be more healthy with their eating because they figure I'm doing this work now. So why ruin it with
bad eting or
a Shake Shack or something, right? So yeah, I think it's fair to say that can lead in that direction. The caveat I would put on that is I don't really try to sell people on the idea of well, if you squat, these is big muscles, big movement, you'll burn more calories or because I don't think it really works that way. I mean, I think today they've got to make lifestyle changes if they want to lose weight.
Yeah.
So I don't tie it directly. But yeah, like I said, I mean, it is true that sometimes it will lead to lifestyle change because they have success and success breeds more success.
Right. And it carries over. In terms of, you mentioned virtual training has helped you improve as a coach in terms of the clarity of cueing. But if you mention that, what's an area of coaching you find yourself constantly working on, and why?
Well, I mean, one area is trying to help people do lifestyle change.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, because lifestyle change is certainly important, and I'd like to be better at that, you know, because the flip side to what I'm talking about is that, like, yeah, you know, like I figured out what I can do, and then that's what I do. But you know, at the same time, that makes me think to myself, well, I should try to be able to do more than this, right? So I think I'm always working on trying to find ways to maybe be a more effective lifestyle coach. Doing the mental health counseling education that I'm doing has actually been very helpful to me, largely in that it's taught me how to get a person to talk about their lifestyle and not try to intervene in it, just
or
listen.
or throw ideas onto them, right? Like have their
right. Yeah, not to do that, just to sort of like let people talk about it and listen, and really try to get an understanding of, you know, what do I think are some of the underlying factors for how their, you know, what their eating habits are, or what their sleeping habits are, or any of that. And, you know, it can go quite deep. Now, of course, I'm not doing like therapy with them. That's not my scope of practice or my job. But if you can have some insight, then and listen, then you can, I think, you know, you can help them sort of analyze their own path, you know, and have their own insights. And so that's been very helpful, and it's something that I want to be better and better at. But it's very hard, right? Because there's so much you can't touch on, you know, when you really would like to. And that's part of why I think I decided to go into mental health counseling, because I just realized like there's so much that I know is there, but is not really for me to work with. Yeah.
But I think it's important. The really important thing I liked you touching on there was something maybe another coach told me about a year ago, was when it came to, you mentioned lifestyle changes or habit setting, there's a greater success rate. He would speak to me, you're going to have a better success rate when the client or the person comes up with their habits they want to own and change, as opposed to, we know as coaches or lifestyle coaches or mental health coaches, you know, we know what the X's and O's are to do to get to from A to B, or to drop body fat mass, or to get stronger, or to sleep more. We know what they are, but it doesn't really work that way, right? And you're saying that if you get a better understanding as to what they're more likely or what more willing to change first, there's a better route that way.
I want to interject right before that, because I think that we know what works for us in our lifestyle, in our current lifestyle today, because, you know, Andrew just had a kid. I'm sure whatever was working for him before he had a kid, that shit ain't working for him right now, right? Like, you got to change a little bit. But yeah, go ahead.
No, yeah, I mean, you're right. Yeah, like being adaptable. Well, you know, I always come back to, you know, none of this is a secret, right? Like people know how to lose weight. No, it's not a secret, right? you gotta eat healthier, you know, and you gotta pay attention to how much you're eating, you know, and the same thing, you know, I think with the basics of exercise, right? And you know, being in better shape, like none of it is a secret, right? You got to be more active. You got to, you know, do some cardio, you know, you got to do some weight training, you know, the particulars of how to do it is where we come in. But yeah, this stuff is not a secret. And really weight loss, you know, I think is not really a secret. I mean, people sort of know the general idea. But clearly it's not that simple, right? It's a phrase I've latched onto recently is that it's simple, but it's not easy.
That's good.
And that I think is the key thing, you know, like you want somebody to eat healthier. Well, that's obvious, you know, but why aren't they eating healthier than they are? What are the things behind that? And what's it going to take to overcome that stuff is way more complex than really personal trainers are equipped to deal with, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But of course, I'm coming from this biased position of going into counseling. But I really believe, like, you really wanted people to get as healthy as they could be. They need counseling too. Everybody needs to sort of understand themselves better. The other thing I've been on about is, we're so much more complex than we realize. And that's a sort of I don't know what the word is, like a mantra that exists, I think, in the mental health field, is like, because there's stigma around mental health, of course, too, right? And people feel like, well, counseling is just for people with problems or something,
or seen as a weakness, right? It's
or a weekness or whatever. But that's not really the case. I mean, really, it's just that we're all a great deal more complex than we realize.
My own therapist, I think when we first started, asked me that whole thing too. But like, hey, David,
God help that therapist, by the way, dealing with you.
Will, if you're listening to this, no, but the stigma around it. Like, you remember he asked me, was like, David, what do you think is gonna happen? Like, what do you think we're doing? Like, what do you think this all means? I'm like, oh shit. Like, I'm like, fuck. So then you just like lay it all out, and then you also come to the realization of, wow, you're conditioned so hard in thinking a certain way about something, and when in reality it's like, no, it's just a part of who you are as a person, whether it be in the weight training room or just in your couch thinking about shit. A lot of things come into play, especially you go into the gym, you're like, I gotta work out on this, but then you go home and you're still like got stuff going on, and that's why mental health, I think, is really important, especially for people trying to get stronger, lose weight, or just move better.
Totally, yeah.
And go on, Andrew, sorry.
I was just gonna say, another phrase I've latched onto is like, everybody's walking around with the world's most powerful supercomputer in their skull, and there's no user manual.
Right.
Which is kind of ridiculous, right?
I wish I could call the dealer and be like, yo, what are we doing?
Right, exactly. There's no genius.
I need a tune-up, bro.
There's no genius bar, right? Like,
for life. It's important, as you mentioned, that I think if we've asked clients or people we work with to, you said, eat healthier or move more, but as you said, there's so much more to it than that. And I think, at least myself as a younger trainer, I thought, damn, this client really doesn't care. Or this client really doesn't want to do cardio and is trying to upset me. No, there's so much more. Yeah, clients probably did hate me.
They're trying to upset Jacques. Jacques getting pissed off. He's
like, this guy. No, but I think it's a very valid point that when you because again, we Angel mentioned, we know what works for us, and we know the tools that someone says, like, for example, when we all went from tier 3 to tier 3 plus, how many of our clients actually wanted a nutrition guide, or actually how many people followed it? Like, you can count maybe on one hand how many you gave, and how many of those stayed with it?
Yeah.
I don't think I can remember any that stayed on a longer period than like 3 months. Not even. So, right. So you think getting the tools from tier 3 to tier 3 plus, not out of a sense of being naive, but you think, okay, I'm more equipped, but the issues or like the makeup of the people are still as challenging to understand. So it's not just because you're more equipped with tools as a trainer that you can tackle everything. I mean, you still want to have that hope, but every person is so different. And then every person's journey to either lose weight or whatever it is, or strength. I think you mentioned something really early on that was important as well, was what does strong mean to that person as well? Like, everyone's idea of I want to get stronger looks different. Like, for us, it could be doing unassisted pull-ups, or for someone, like you said, someone maybe in the older populations, it's just being able to sit up and down without pain. It's just about go on.
You've set me up with one of my pet peeves, Jacques. I'm really glad you brought this up. This is good. I think the industry could really use this. It would be really helpful. We need to get everybody to understand the definition of strength. There should be only one.
Yeah.
Right. Because it would be a lot easier, I think, for us particularly. Right. And, I always tell clients, like, look, strength is how much force can you produce against gravity?
Oh my God. I heard Keith's voice when you said those words.
But it is so important, right? Because if you realize like, okay, strength is how much force can you produce, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then it clears up a lot of the sort of mystery around strength training, right? So like I try to tell people, like, for example, right? Okay, like, how much force does it take to lift 10 pounds, right? And how much force does it take to lift 10 pounds 10 times? It's the same amount. It's the same amount of force. You got to lift that 10 pounds. You got to produce the same amount of force every single time. That doesn't change. Doesn't matter if you do it 1,000 times. It's still the same amount. And then how much force do you have to produce to lift 100 pounds? Way more, right? And so I just think that's a really key and important thing to make clients aware of, that, like, just because you're using a weight or something doesn't mean you're doing strength training. Because if you haven't gotten to the point where you can now produce more force than you could when you started, then you haven't done strength training. So I think that's a really important point. And it ties into what we've been talking about, right? Because the vagary around stuff,
the non-specificity behind it, yeah,
right, it's very difficult. We talk about this all the time, right? You got to have specific and measurable goals. Mm-hmm. Well, that starts with knowing what you're talking about, right? And that everybody's on the same page about what we're talking about. So yeah, anyways, you just
no, actually makes
that up to me, Jacques, and I had
it's good. I teed you up for the match point right there. That and then toned, right? That's the other one where I'm toned. You think
we got to lengthen and tone, guys.
What is? I just go, all right, I'm gonna have to extract it out of this person what it really means. Because even when you ask them, oh, who do you want to look like? I don't know. You're like, oh, fucking hell. Like, there's always a lost cause. Not lost cause.
Toned, yeah, we've lost that battle.
That one's kind of in the wash.
Till the industry just stops using it forever. Like, I think we're stuck.
Whenever I have an equal fit and they say that, I just ignore it. And then I always change the word into like lean or something, right? Or like, whatever it is. I'm like, oh, you want to lean out? Oh, okay.
Well, again, as a trainer, you got to know what you can actually deliver, right? So if somebody tells me like, hey, like, I want to be more toned and whatever, like, I may or may not be able to deliver that. Like, I really just don't know. I think there's something to be said here for, without getting too up on a soapbox here, like, there's something to be said for, professional integrity, and just sort of, if somebody says like, I want to be more toned, I never come back with something like, oh yeah, we'll get that for you. Like, I never say something like that, because I don't know if that's going to happen. The most I'll say is like, well, I'll say like, hey, tone is just good looking muscles, right? Basically muscles that somebody see, and there's enough of it that there's something to see, and if we do strength training, it's going to be good for your muscles, and you may get that.
They may hypertrophy.
They may or hypertrophy.
That is as far as I'll go, right?
Yeah.
I will never say like, yeah, we'll get you all toned up.
You're setting yourself up for failure, I think, if you go, yeah, got you, right? Yeah.
Set yourself up for failure, and again, you don't know that you can deliver that. So me personally, I just opt not to say that I can.
I wanted to close off of asking you one last quick thing. What are there any certifications you have in your site that you want to do in the near future, or?
Well, the mental health counseling stuff has taken most of my focus, and is giving me a lot that's really useful for my training. So I feel really, I feel good about, the development that I am doing through that program. So I don't have any fitness certifications like that I've got my sights set on right now. The last one I did was the USAW Olympic lifting cert, level 1. I did that like a year and a half ago or 2 years. It must have been 2 years ago now. And that's a
I need to get that one.
Yeah, it's a cool program.
It's fun. It looks fun.
Yeah, and it's fun, and there's so much more. I mean, probably if I was going to do another cert, my next thing would probably be to do level 2, maybe, to get more into that, because level 1 really is sort of like intro to and basics.
I may be wrong. I heard if you want to do the level 2 stuff, you have to show that you've coached like someone into a meet. Was that, am I wrong in saying that?
Someone's lying to you, David, I think.
Well, you know what? I'm not actually 100% sure about that. I don't know.
How much are you squatting, Andrew?
less than I was a year ago, David, which is not good.
Tell me about it. My numbers have just been like, ooh, it's been ridiculous.
Yeah, I've been basically doing kettlebell squats, and that is, although, man, I forgot how hard kettlebell front squats are. Does anybody else feel that way?
Yeah,
for real.
Gee, I was like, geez, man, doing barbell back squats with way more weight felt easier than this.
Yeah, I think that is the case, though. All right, because you're not using, not that your core shuts off in the back, and we won't go into the nitty gritty of it, but I totally agree. When you're squatting on the bar in the back and whatever weight, you're like, oh, I can definitely do more weight in my back.
Yeah. You don't have that weight pulling on you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's why some squats look better with weight on. You know, it's like, he's like, I have a client who we squat with the bar. I'm like, all right, let me get a couple of reps here, and then he's like, then I would tell him what he needs to work on. He says, but when we add weight, David, it'll look so much better. I'm like,
David, isn't that your story? Aren't you one of those guys who can't squat with 325 on the bar?
Not anymore. No.
David only uses the dowel now, right? No one can use a dowel because David's the only one using it.
Hey, man, I think I have one guy who I'm teaching O-lifts with. That's pretty fun. He's trying to, but he's been taught by whatever strength coach he had at college, and it's kind of like, all right, dude.
That's a big step down for him, is what you're saying.
Oh, shit.
Oh, you got your back, David.
You know what? No, I deserve that, Andrew.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
All right,
you can't dish it out if you can't take it, David.
Right.
No, we should all go to Hoboken and squat.
Oh, dear God. Yeah.
We should all be eligible to get the vaccine by May 1st. Then we'll all go and.
I'll tell you, I did do some barbell back squats at my parents' house, because we've got a barbell from 1970 there, and oh man, it felt terrible.
It's from your heyday.
I couldn't believe how bad that felt.
It's all rusted up.
Yeah, my body or the bar?
Both.
Both.
Anyway.
Yeah, no, it was ugly.
Well, if anybody wants to, look you up, or maybe, shoot you an email, or if you have any upcoming, projects coming along, if somebody wants to train with you, where can we find you? Do you have a website? What's going on?
So, yeah, I have a blog, which is www.reachutmost.com. So, it's just a blog, a bunch of stuff on there, some videos and things like that. But there's contact info for me there as well. So that's probably the best way. I tried, to be more active on social media, and
you got that IG, Andrew.
I failed miserably. You're not going to find me there. So really, it's just that, if you put in my name in Google, Andrew Schaeffer and personal trainer, it'll come up pretty quickly. My biggest claim to fame is I have one video on YouTube. Get this. So I tried to, do the social media stuff, right? Like,
right now.
You rack your brain, you try to come up with interesting things. I put up one video talking about the scapular movements, right? Protraction, retraction, elevation, depression. That's it. And the thing's 30 seconds long. And it's like Marissa's, showing the scapular movements, and I'm just saying, like, here it is. Uh-huh. That thing's got like 65,000 views on it or something.
Damn.
Right? Wow.
Hey.
Like, yeah. And I was like, I can't believe I put in all this effort into all these other things, and this thing, for some reason, is interesting. So
anyway, you have to do it now. You have to do more videos. You get your baby hanging up on a bar and show grip strength.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I haven't exploited Beverly enough yet.
Oh my God.
You could be a YouTuber and you can like quit the day job, and that'd be like
the cute baby videos. Yep.
You're like, this is how you squat, and then you just like pan over to your baby.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I gave up on social media, so the websites.
One quick thing, and we won't respect your time, but when you mentioned about living in Germany, I think David made a comment. So are you saying that if you went back to Hamburg, they wouldn't be like, this guy's a legend in the music industry? You just kind of left that career behind. I could just imagine that, and they're like, oh my god, that's Andrew Schaeffer.
What year were you there in living in Hamburg?
So I was in Hamburg from 2008 until 2011.
I went to Hamburg in 2008 with my
no
high
kidding.
school. Yeah.
Probably crossed each other on the street.
Who knows? I'm like, who the fuck is this tall motherfucker? Like, who is this guy?
But the answer to your question, Jacques, is yes. They will say that guy's a legend.
Nice.
Yeah, I thought so. You go back and you're like music royalty.
Everybody knows. Isn't there? What was that documentary about the guy who went to South Africa? I think he didn't know he was famous in South Africa. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's called. Oh, it's a fascinating story. I can't remember what it was called. It had a name. Oh man, what was it called? I can't remember. It's about a musician. This guy, he recorded an album in 1970 or something, right? And it became a huge hit in South Africa. And he was like super. I think it was South Africa. I could be getting the place wrong, but I think that's right. And he was like super famous in South Africa. It's called Finding the Something Man or something. I can't remember. But anyway,
Finding Nemo. Short, no, wait.
Long story short, he was like a guy. He lived in like Minneapolis, and like was very just like an unknown person. He had no clue he was famous in South Africa, and they tracked him down. And then he like went and did like a whole concert series in South Africa.
Damn, that'll be you when you go back to Hamburg.
Yeah,
like
hoping that's me in Hamburg. Unwittingly, I'm famous.
Hey, let me know. I'll be your rhythm guitarist.
I have friends in Hamburg now, and I'm pretty sure it's not the case.
Damn. All right. Maybe in 5 years' time it'll blow up again.
Oh, it's Searching for Sugar Man?
Yes, I think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah. Wow. You guys can read up on that in your spare time.
All right, cool. I'm gonna look your name up on every search engine. LexisNexis. find the dirt on Schaeffer.
Oh man,
that's awesome.
All right, thanks, Andrew. Thanks for joining us. This is fun.
Thank you, Andrew. This was awesome.
Yeah, thank you guys. It was fun to be here.
Cool. Thank you.
That was awesome.
We had a rock star. Who knew?
Damn, we had no idea.
That was insane. Pretty cool. So many tidbits. So many like side questions and all that stuff. I'd love to like pick his brain a little bit more. I was gonna say that was one of the best things about working with him was the amount of knowledge in there. It was just I miss that about being at 76th Street as well. I think those senior trainers are just at 76 for whatever reason. They're just rock stars.
But you just come back.
That's man.
Angel was kind of coming in, but
I keep seeing. I saw Marcella today.
Angel, where you at?
We spoke. But it's cool. It's so cool to be surrounded by people who have been training for, it's not even that long, really. It is like, 10 years, 15 years, I guess that is kind of long, but they've been training and got this wealth of knowledge. I know Keith has been training for God knows how long, but it's something to be brought up or like working with people who are that well versed in whatever, occupation it is. And then they'll give you some feedback and they'll give you some notes and all that stuff. So it's been absolute pleasure to be around that group, especially when I was trainer.
I can't find it.
Oh, of him doing the scapular retraction. I'll look for it. I'll look for it and I'll tag it on the YouTube.
You found it?
No, wait, this is a different. It has 1.8 thousand views. It's a different one though. It's a bent over reverse fly. We'll put all these the link to this thing on the website.
Definitely.
But yeah, he's got a couple of videos on this thing, but I can't find the other one. Maybe it was
pretty cool.
Marissa, yeah.
No, that is awesome.
And we have all these trainer feed YouTube videos on there.
That's
like
true too.
2 views an episode.
All right. With that said, like, subscribe, all that jazz. We'll wrap it up. We'll call it here.
Oh my God. Sorry.
Thanks, guys, for joining us on this episode of the Trainer Feed, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye, guys.